Well, it's week 9 of the LCS, and I am joined right now by Bjergsen, player of the game. I don't even know if you got player of the game?
I do now.
You do. Well, either way, of course, this coverage brought to you by Alienware. Bjergsen, it's been a while since I've had a chance to talk to you, so I'm really excited that I'm getting to talk to you now, in part because it feels like everything is turning up Bjergsen lately. You've been getting player of the game, I think, frequently recently, and you're a big topic of conversation for MVP. What is it, do you think, that has changed recently that has allowed you to really pop off and catch so much attention?
Mm, just being a cohesive team obviously helps a lot. I think in the last 2 years, especially last year, I was trying to really. I felt like I was holding a lot of hands in the game, and I felt like it was always on me to make the right calls and the right macro, and I had to make sure that people were doing the right things. But you can't perform individually if you're constantly doing that because you're just trying to kind of micromanage everything, and at a certain point, it just becomes overwhelming. Um, so I came into this split kind of with the mindset that obviously we're going to work on everything in the team aspect outside of the game, but in the game, I need to make sure that I'm always performing at my best individually. And then, of course, I'm also helping with the team macro. I'm also communicating a lot, but that I'm not sacrificing my individual play to be the kind of like mastermind within the game because it's just going to make my individual play suffer. And in this in this day and age, it's not the macro game to win. You have to play well individually, and you have to fight well individually if you want to win games. So it's been a big focus of mine.
Yeah, I mean, is there, along with that, you say part of it is you not feeling like you need to hold hands or sacrifice, but I'm also kind of curious, is there any part of you that's just like, fuck it, I'm finally gonna carry? Like, is there part of you that just, because it does feel, and you've had great splits in the past, but it really lately feels like I'm back in the day to when you first joined, and it just felt like you were really dominating in lane.
Um, yeah, I don't really know. It does feel like individually things are just going a bit smoother for me this split. I'm not having as many mistakes individually. Um, I have kind of changed my mindset a little bit with how I play solo queue, and I went from at one point in last split actually being in Diamond 1 for like 2 weeks till now I've been like 1K plus LP for this entire split pretty much. So I think my approach to solo queue and individual practice has really improved, and that's also just made me play better individually.
Yeah. What do you think it is that's caused you to like double down on individual practice and want to be so good?
I mean, of course, I always want to be the best. Just I noticed that the mentality that I had in solo queue was really kind of holding me back, and that I wanted to play my matchup the way that it's supposed to be played, or how it should play out in a competitive match. And I wanted these things that I felt like is how the game should be played. But the way you practice solo queue is really just that you do the best under whatever given circumstance that you have. Even if I have a matchup where I'm supposed to crush, but maybe my jungler is playing Shyvana and all he does is farm camp, so he never wants to leave his jungle for the entire game. And also, I have a Janna, so the enemy team has a Bard that's roaming on me every wave. Then I can't play the matchup the way it's supposed to be played. Now my job is just not to die, and hopefully there's some payoff off of having this power farm jungler or this scaling enchanter support. So just kind of being more realistic and playing for the game that I'm in, I think is a really good skill to have, and it also adapts you to stage because things don't always play out the perfect way, and it's helps you be more adaptable in the game.
Well, I also want to ask you about what these past couple of weeks have been like for you because obviously, you had so much success on TSM, and TSM had so much success with you until the last couple of years, where still successful but not making it the cut to get to Worlds. And it's interesting because it kind of, I think a lot of TSM fans might have been a little worried at the start of this year and even at the start of Summer Split that like, oh, is this going to be a repeat? And so I'm kind of curious what your experience has been like, especially in the past couple of weeks, because it does feel like this is the TSM that so many fans knew for so many years, just really dominant, you doing great in your lane, and it definitely feels like you guys are a world's caliber team. So what is it like to return to sort of that situation again?
Mm, it feels really good. Obviously, from winning LCS multiple times, I know what it feels like to be in a team that can win LCS. And it's really frustrating when you're in a team where it feels like nothing is working, people are not on the same page. You just know that in the game, people are not thinking about the right things or they're not communicating the right things. And that can be really stressful when you have been there and you know what it feels like to be in a game where everyone is on the same page, people are communicating the correct things. I think this split, I mean, a lot of people were surprised that Parth was coming back kind of as the head coach, and we also brought up Mabry from the academy team, because I think the way we really did it this way was just that we're going back to the TSM roots a little bit more. So we're taking people that know what TSM is like, what kind of culture we want, what we want to focus on, what are really like the values of TSM, and especially Reggie, because he was a big part of the team's success in the past and the kind of mindset and environment that he enforced. Whereas in the last 2 years, we brought in Song, we brought in Zigzlaw, we brought in Peter Zhang, even though he did work with the academy team. It was more like, we're going to bring in these coaches and they're going to coach the team and they're going to set the standard and the culture and these kinds of things. And it just didn't work for us. And now we're kind of taking it back, like, all right, we need to do this. And I think that's been working a lot better for us. And obviously, Peter is a big part in helping some parts of the culture, like being really honest and really direct, and making sure that you can be both friends, but you can also be really hard on each other. I think that's something that comes really naturally to him. And if you're alone trying to do that, which I felt a little bit in the last few years, it can be hard because you don't want to be the one guy who ruins the fun mood or the kind of friendship feelings.
Yeah.
But having Peter with me to kind of do that, then it's like, oh, this is how they're both talking. This is how our team is.
Yeah, now there's two guys ruining the mood, not just one.
Yeah, just two awful people screaming at the TSM jungler.
Yeah, and clearly that's what the jungler needs. He's like, previously one person screaming at me was not enough, but now we've got two. I'm glad you brought up the coaching situation, because there's a meme that, I mean, I'm guilty even of referencing it, but based off of this kind of rumor of like Bjergsen is the coach now, or Doublelift and Bjergsen are the coach, and like Parth has that role officially, but he's not in the same way that most people think of as coaches actually coaching. And so this has kind of gone around the scene a little bit. I'm kind of curious if you can shed some light on, like, is that true? Is Parth there more facilitating the discussion, kind of what we've heard about from like LEC coaches, or is he, very hands-on and like dictating sort of in a traditional way? I'm kind of curious what your read is on the situation.
Peter and I are definitely not coaching, but we did want it to be more of a player-focused team this split. Last split, Peter Zhang, he kind of has a style where he's the guy that talks majority of the time in the review. The players listen, the players do what he says. That didn't work very well for us. We had certain players who didn't do very well in that kind of environment, and it's also a really hard coaching style to execute, because if you're wrong, the players are going to start losing trust in you really quickly, because you're not throwing out suggestions, you're saying this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. So you pretty much have to be right all the time. So we brought in Parth and Baby to more so manage the team, collaborate with the players. Obviously, they're still doing coaching. They still have the final say in draft and things like that. So it's not like the players are just running the show. But the players are definitely talking a lot more in things like review. And we've also been working on, in the beginning of the split, for example, it was a lot of the players talking. But I tried to help the coaching staff, or just in general, we talked to the coaching staff about that there are certain things that players do that are just not acceptable. Like if you're feeding in a scrim or you're dying in this really obvious way every time, these reoccurring mistakes that the coaching staff still has to be there to be really hard on people in those moments and to let them know that it's not okay. And that's something that especially Mabry has been really stepping it up with. And I think it's also something Parth is pretty good on naturally. So I just think the coaching staff and the players collaborate. It's not really the coaches do everything or the players do everything. Yeah,
Right.
We just work together.
Can you perhaps provide some assistance to people like myself and others who in a couple days will be voting on coach of the split? Because there's an interesting situation here, right? Where Parth for so many years, I think, maybe by TSM fans more than any other group, has been, really critiqued. People have called for him to leave the organization or at least not be involved at all on the competitive side. People have been angry about his drafts, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, I feel like there's a pretty strong case this split to vote for Parth as coach of the split, especially given what you guys are doing here at the end of the split. So I'm kind of curious, what would you say to people who are stuck in that moment of like, well, Parth is supposedly not great and was been the coach in the past whenever the team has struggled a ton, but also this split he seems great. So, what is your read on that situation?
Have you guys seen all the people Parth has scouted? Actually, that's just a meme if you didn't know. But
No, I'm very familiar with the meme. I mean, that meme plays somewhat into people's lack of
yeah,
trust, right? Like they don't think necessarily that Parth is doing the scouting. So
um, I don't know. I don't think the coaches split is really a very useful award, like most people say, because no one except for the people know what is going on behind the scenes, and um, a coach is needed for very different things in very different teams, depending on what kind of players they have. Maybe in one team, it's more about managing personalities. Maybe in another team, it's more about keeping the players disciplined and keeping them honest to maybe their goals, or if they're consistently making the same mistake, that they're kind of on people's ass about that. And maybe in one team, the coach has to all out coach and coach a really systematic way from the very fundamentals of how the players should play the game. So, yeah, I don't really have a good answer. I feel like it's probably going to go to like Jet or something because Jet just got in the scene and TL is doing well, so it must be all Jet, right? I'm sure
yeah,
Jet is doing a good job, and I think Parth is also doing a good job, but in reality, no one knows. So everyone is just voting kind of like with a blind eye.
yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to see how things go. Now you make me kind of want to abstain at all. You're like, the award is useless. People don't know enough about it. So, I guess we'll have to see how it goes.
But vote for Parth. It's useless, but vote for Parth.
It's useless, but vote for Parth. That's a great campaign slogan for Parth Coach 2020. Okay, so also along the lines of just the kind of like throwback stuff. How much of this team, how similar is this team in your experiences with this roster to the rosters that you had in what 2016 and 2017, back whenever you guys were making it to Worlds and finding a ton of success?
mm, how is it similar?
Or different? I mean, I'm kind of curious. Like, does it feel a lot like that again, especially with you and Double F being such prominent voices on the team, or is this like a really unique lineup and experience that you haven't had before?
Mm, I think it's different in the sense that we kind of have five voices that are always voicing their opinions, and that's really helpful. And it's not really something I had in the past. Like, obviously, Vincent is not really known for being someone who, or Bierfrost is not someone who speaks his opinion too much. Uh, Svenskeren was also not really kind of the kind of jungler who would control the entire game through the communication like we would see like a Jankos or something, where in our team it was a lot of the laners kind of working with the jungler and not really the jungler doing everything or communicating everything in the game. But I think we have a pretty healthy balance. I think that the thing I really like to this team is that everyone is willing to take a backseat when needed, even Peter. Uh, it's just something that he had to work on throughout the split, but there are games where he barely talks at all and he's just doing his job and he's just playing AD carry. And there's other games where he's in control and he really steps up and he communicates the team to kind of carry the game. And I was really happy to see that from him, that he doesn't feel the need to always be in control and be the one communicating everything, especially now that we have Treats in and he is taking some of that load off of Doublelift, that he doesn't have to communicate everything about how to play on ball lane. But I think the overall culture and kind of feeling of the team is very similar. Like, we are friends, but we're still really direct with each other and can be kind of hard on each other. There's a little bit more of an age difference now. Like, BB and Spica, I think, are like 18 to 19. Peter and I are 24 or 25, compared to, I think, the old roster. We were all early 20s, late teens. But we still get along really well. And we care for each other because we just really want to win and we want the best for each other.
Is there anything that you and or Doublelift have done to make Spica and Treats comfortable? Because it's like communicating and speaking up, because it's rare that you have, I feel like, players who are relatively new to the LCS on the same team as like these very, very established veterans and feeling like, hey, I can voice criticism or feedback or whatever.
Mm, I think a big part is just treating them like any other player on the team and not shielding them or babying them. I don't want to. I have kind of come into the split before where it's like, oh, TSM ruins junglers, so I'm not going to try to enforce my view of the game onto the jungler because I'm not always right. But then it just ends up that our team sucks. So I think just us being really direct with each other about what mistakes you see and encouraging them to speak from their point of view and their opinion, and just having those kind of difficult, uncomfortable talks from the beginning, I think really helped integrate them, and also just make them feel like a part of the team faster. Because, all right, Trees, you're in, but you're like anyone else in the team. You're going to get the same amount of criticism. We're not going to give you, like 2 weeks to fit in with the team. You're coming here to perform because you've been performing well in academy, and just naturally, they're very talkative people. It's not like we're bringing in these really shy players who are afraid of speaking their opinion. When I was listening to our academy team last split, we were obviously strongly considering bringing up Spica. Not as much Streets at the time, but they are just running the entire game. Like, those guys are communicating all the time. They're setting up all the plays. And I thought, like, wow, if these guys actually have the individual skill to play in the LCS, like, their communication is so good, and they're doing a really good job leading the game. So that's why I felt really comfortable also bringing up Spica, just watching how they played in the academy and how much he's directing the game.
Yeah. Well, I guess the last question here is, like, we talked about coach of the split, but you are also, I think, in the running for MVP. Do you think about that? Would you want to get MVP? Does it mean a lot to you? Obviously you've done it before, so.
It would mean a lot to me to get MVP again, because when you're on teams that don't do well, of course, there's some more self-doubt. Like, I also was playing worse, I think, in the last few years, and it's kind of hard to tell how much is the environment and maybe my teammates affecting me. Am I just not playing at the same high level that I was before? And right now I feel a lot more confident in myself than I have in the last couple of years. And it's kind of a snowball, right? Like, you start playing well, you start having more confidence. That snowballs into you continuing to play well because you're playing confident and you're not coming into the games kind of being anxious about how it's going to play out or things like that. So I think if I was to get it, it would just kind of be a proof to myself that I am still the best in my role. And it's hard for you to tell yourself that when you're just losing.
Yeah.
I think you're kind of a clown if you are on a losing team and you're saying, like, I'm the best in my role, because then probably you wouldn't be like a, I don't know, fourth place team, which is probably the average of what we've been in the last couple of years. So yeah.
Well, on that note, anything that you want to say to any of the fans before we wrap up the interview?
Sorry for kind of being MIA most of the time. I think that I do the best when I'm away from some of this craziness of social media and the scrutiny of the fans, and I'm really just focusing on myself and my team. So that's probably why you don't see me doing a lot of interviews. You don't see me posting on social media very much. But yeah, I hope you guys respect that and support that, and know that I'm just trying to do what's best for me and to give you guys the best games that I can bring you, because that is ultimately my job. It's to entertain you guys through my good performances, and I hope I'm doing that currently.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the interview, and I do really appreciate you taking the time to do this, because I know that, as you said, oftentimes you'd rather just focus on the game. So thank you again, and for everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things League of Legends right here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching that interview. I hope you enjoyed it and will consider subscribing to the channel. I've been trying to grow my subscribers recently, and if you are subscribed already, maybe you can click the bell, which is also pretty helpful for the stats, I guess. Either way, I also want to point out something really exciting, and I don't know if you guys are watching this on the 13th or later or before, but starting on the 13th of this month, Alienware is participating in Intel Gamer Days, which you can check out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a big banner up at the site. And in fact, in order to celebrate it, they're actually giving away an amazing setup, a powerful Intel PC, a 34-inch curved monitor, peripherals, a $300 Steam card, just everything you need to go get your gaming stuff set up. So either way, thank you so much to Alienware, and congratulations on your involvement, hopefully, in Intel Gamer Days whenever you click through. Maybe you'll win. Who knows?